Hello, everyone. I'm Shreyas Lakhotia, the head of corporate engagement at MLDA at EEE. I welcome you all to the first episode of the MLDA AI podcast. And with me, I have a very special guest for today. So most of you know that I'm a year 3 EEE student, and many of my juniors ask me about talent. What does it mean to be a talented individual at one of the best universities in the world? I'll tell you what talent is. Talent is building robots that learn from phones and AR, VLMs that point where to act, and foundation models that you can edit before they move. It's growing MLDA like a startup. It's the Ko Boon Hui Scholars Award, the A-Star PhD Scholarship, and wins from Make MIT to the Singapore India Hackathon. If you are all those things, you are talented. You are Mr. Jiafei Duan.
Thanks
I welcome you here. Thank you for taking out the time to be with us here today. Just first off, how does it feel to be back?
Yeah, it feels as if that I just graduated not long ago from NTU EEE and MLDA. It's good to see everyone here, and also in the same context, seeing what I was here 3-4 years ago, and I did my whole undergrad process, and being part of MLDA and seeing how MLDA have grown tremendously over the past few years.
I'm glad that you speak about MLDA because you've been one of the most accomplished presidents.
No, I think all the presidents are doing pretty well. Yeah.
Yes, of course. Perhaps we talk about you today. So you've sown the seeds of development here at this club. You've seen it grow up from the grassroots. And today we are here in the immaculate maturity and glory that is MLDA at EEE in 2025.
Yeah.
How does it just compare to where you left it at? And
yeah, I think the whole idea when we first so Liu Yuan founded MLDA, and then there was another president before me, and he graduated, and then I took over. I think back then the goal, at least for me, was to see how far we can push or bring MLDA to a status that is going to be relevant in terms of both the industry and also at school levels of attract potential talents like you guys to be part of this student organization, and in the same way how we can actually help students to learn about machine learning and AI. And I guess if you look back at that point in time, there wasn't this large language model, there wasn't all these GPT models, and that was really a good time to sort of get started, understanding, even building some of those basic foundations, and also being a EEE student means that we are really able to diversify our skill set beyond just electrical engineering. And then I guess I see that this is a really good opportunity for us to develop. And I think at that point someone has to take up the leadership role. So I think I stood forward and volunteered myself, and the rest are just history. And yeah.
just feels so good to hear that because many of our members here in the audience today were actually past members of last year's Deep Learning Week.
Oh, okay.
And I think you raise a very good point. Of course, NTU EEE offers you the versatility of working on the cores of electrical engineering, along with exploring machine learning and data science and all the foundations that are very dynamic in today's day and age. But one more thing that I'd like to talk to you about from MLDA's point of view is Deep Learning Week itself. I think even during our chat earlier, you mentioned that you hit 1,000+ participants. And to those of you who don't know, the Foreign Minister of Singapore, Dr. Vivian Balakrishnan, was here at NTU for Deep Learning Week when Jiafei was president. So just can you walk us through that? That event itself?
Yeah, so that was the second time we sort of organized the Deep Learning Week, and the first time was done within NTU itself, but that was pre-COVID. And during my year when I was doing the Deep Learning Week, I have a ambition, or I have a dream that maybe we can try to make this one of the largest events in Singapore, at least for AI wise. So obviously, to achieve that requires you to really get the best people, not just Dr. Vivian to sort of give us the agenda of Singapore's national effort towards AI, but also to have really well-versed experts from the industry to be part of the panel to sort of discuss with our students about the latest advancements in AI back then. So I think that was the sort of the moonshot idea that we try to strive for. And I guess being bold and being brave about having no bounds sort of pushes me and my team to try to achieve that goal. And I think looking back, it seems like everything happens so smoothly, and we managed to invite Dr. Vivian. But there was so much like, things that happens along the way, because, to reach out to him is kind of difficult. And also to get this coordination with all these like established speakers also took a lot of effort. So I think like looking back, it always seems that everything happens so easily. But, when at that moment itself, I think there was so much problems that we have to solve and address. I guess like that's part of being an NTU AAA student, also being an MLDA student, which is that, we are not afraid of, taking up the tough challenge. Yeah. And also to dream big. I think that's
of course. That does sound like a very exhilarating experience, if I can put it that way. We do take the torch forward and try to grow Deep Learning Week every single year. And this year we hope to break your record by going past 1,000. And I'm sure the entire Deep Learning Week team watching this at home is feeling particularly inspired. With that, I think you mentioned very succinctly that it is important to learn. And in today's day and age, of course, ChatGPT is the most important tool that's indispensable, perhaps, to most of us.
Yeah.
And most of the students also use, because of the empowerment that ChatGPT or generative AI provides them, it's become very easy for anyone to learn these skills and contribute to projects. So speaking of projects, perhaps I'd like you to go down memory lane and perhaps talk about some of the one or two very important projects that you feel define some of your moments at NTU.
In NTU?
Yeah, in NTU, and perhaps help you in the future as well.
So I think I'll talk a bit about the projects that I work on. Also, we'll talk a bit about the projects that sort of started from my batch at MLDA, that not just help me to learn things, but also to help people in MLDA or like students in MLDA to sort of grow and develop. So I think for my personal growth, I think like the final year project was definitely one of the key milestones, whereby I got the opportunity to work with Professor Wen Bing Han, who is I think currently the mentor of MLDA.
Yes.
Yeah. So we work on a project that basically tries to understand physical interaction through video analysis, and that led to a publication in ECCV, which is one of the top computer vision conference, and that was only like my 4th year in undergrad here. So that was like one of my first major publication, and that also gave me a sense of what it is like to do academic research at a large scale. And I think that was also one of the experience that sort of propels me forward to knowing that I'm going to do a PhD in AI and robotics. And so that's for my personal growth. And I think a lot of this could not be, possible without the support of like, MLDA, because a lot of these experiments that I ran actually runs on the GPU that MLDA provides. Yeah, so that's the first aspect. I think the second aspect to sort of answer the question of what kind of projects sort of leave a mark with me is that there's a lot of very interesting projects that students propose to us when I was the president of MLDA. And some of these projects seems, looking back right now, it seems like, okay, it's just a student project. But, at that point in time, I think there's a lot of like relevance, and it really helps students to learn a lot. So I think one of the project that the student that proposed that sort of leave a mark with me is that, back then there was COVID and everyone was wearing masks. I guess nowadays we are wearing masks. So what we did was that we actually did, they actually developed a tracking algorithm that is deployed on Jackson Nano and installed right at the door there. So anyone who comes into MLDA, it will scan for their face and check whether they are wearing masks. So
that sounds very interesting. I'm glad we don't have to use that anymore.
Yeah, but the door is not locked. So there's nothing, nothing is stopping them from coming in, but, there's just that cool feature and being a club that talks all about AI and ML, you want to show it not just in terms of words, but in action. So we are showing that in a real world application. Yeah. And seeing how, someone takes what they learn from the deep learning course and translating that, experience of what they learn into like real world application. I think that's what really is really motivating for me. Yeah, personally. Yeah.
Yep. I think it circles back to our club's core philosophy, which is learn, apply, and connect. The 3 pillars of MLDA, to those of you who don't know: learn through our many programs, through our academics team, apply what projects you develop, and connect with industry. That's the core tenets that our club was founded on. But moving on, I think you also rightfully mentioned this about the curiosity and engaging in projects and about how students are driving innovation forward here. But I think, especially from the point of view of first-year students, they feel very intimidated in a sense while joining a club like MLDA, because we've been particularly branded as an academic club these days. So, coming from your experience, perhaps you can talk to us more about from what you've seen at NTU and Washington about how students generally tend to approach getting into this space. If you can maybe talk about a 30-day plan or something of that sort.
For sure. So I think like I think maybe like transitioning from NTU into like University of Washington in Seattle, it sort of like broadened my perspective of how I, perceive, I guess, not just research, but in general, the whole education system, and also in the way that, how students engage in terms of, learning new things, deploying it, and really being at the frontier of some of this cutting edge research, and also to be, why I just say like to be bold about certain things. So I think like one very prominent example that I will give is that I have a friend, a colleague, or friend, like he's a PhD student at University of Washington, recently quit PhD because Meta offered him a salary of $250 million for 4 years. So at the age of like 25, which is younger than me, able to get such a competitive salary, I think it just shows that the younger people these days, are not in the same kind of status as the past generation, because we are getting better and better. We are having all this leverage of like technologies that at the tip of at our fingertips, and I guess then that sort of pull us away from doing all this labor intensive work of like learning, or even try to figure out how to learn. For example, I'm just like a show of hands, how many of you use GPT to code? Yeah. So most of them use, and those people who doesn't raise their hand, they're probably using like a cursor or something along that line. Yeah. So I think the rationale is that these are advancements in technology that is really useful in terms of helping us to sort of lift up the labor of trying to figure out and learn new things, and that gives us the freedom to actually really think deeper about what's the kind of problem that you want to try to solve. And I think don't be afraid to solve the big problem. I think that's the number one thing that I sort of see, at least being in the States for like a few years, that people there, regardless how young, how old they might be, they are not afraid of solving the hard problem. And even if that sounds like really, out of this world, but someone has to think about it and someone has to act upon it in order to make it, be part of the world. Yeah. So I think that's like some of the insights that I gather, and hopefully sharing with students from EEE that will maybe, I won't use the word inspire you to think differently, but at least give you some kind of context that you are able to do things bigger than what you think. Yeah,
I think that's very well said. To not be afraid of solving the big problems of the world these days.
Yeah,
I think that's perhaps the first hurdle, just taking on problems and taking them head first. I think that's something we can all learn from. Perhaps a rather easier question for you. What is one habit from your NTU days that you think really pushed you forward towards the right direction, or something that you like to do even today?
Okay, so one habit that I have during my NTU days, which I'm not sure whether like, are you guys mostly AAA student? Some IEM student? Okay, so I think like, I was a AAA student, so I have friends who are from AAA and IEM. I know that, we like to do homework last minute. We like to, only when the exam comes, then starts to grind for the exam. So I think one habit that I really sort of have back in the days, even till today, I still try to do is, get the things that need to be done, and don't procrastinate. Yeah, don't study for your final year and start doing, final year papers like 1 month before. Like do it in a more progressive process, and then, you'll be much better. And I think that's just for like, exam context, but in any context, if there's something that needs to be done, do it. Don't procrastinate. I think that's a habit, or, something that I continuously trying to do even till today. Yeah.
That does sound like something very important, but unfortunately most of us aren't able to adopt it. I have some of my friends here, and we used to solve our digital electronics and analog electronics assignments right here at 12 a.m., 3 a.m. And those are some of the very fun moments, if I can put it that way, from MLDS history.
Oh, and maybe another habit that I want to point out, which I think is a good tip for any student here that tries to study, for like, so I wouldn't say my study is the best, but I think I have a decent GPA. Yeah, I'm not going to say how much.
That's an understatement.
Yeah. But I think one of the number one secrets I learned over the years is that there's no point to do things at night. Because if you think about it, the amount of time you spend, grinding through the night to try to get your things done, and leading to you waking up really late, the number of hours is equivalent the same as if you try to sleep early and you wake up early and you do, some work in the morning. So the amount of hours didn't change fundamentally, but you're going to get much more better effects out of it. And this is something that I observed over the past, years. And this is also a habit that I've been consistently trying to keep up to. Yeah.
I think that is important, and it's something that we can all adopt in our day-to-day life. Moving on, I'd like to talk about some of your work. So first off, let's touch upon R2D2.
Yeah, sure.
To those of you at home, and those of you new to robotics, robots generally learn by experience. They either watch humans trying tasks or touching real hardware, but all of this is very slow and costly. And some of Jiafei's work is actually aimed at that through R2D2. So perhaps you can tell us about your motivation and philosophy behind it.
I think there's someone coming. Yeah, I think it's my friend.
Yeah.
So I think the motivation is that AI2D2 was like the first project that I sort of work on when I first joined the University of Washington. And the whole idea of that project is basically we are looking into like solving some of the problems that people struggle, in the field of robot learning. And for people who are not in robot learning, maybe just to give a bit of context, when you train a lot of these like, humanoids or, robotic system in a learning-based approach, you need to collect demonstrations, you need to collect data. But one of the largest problems of collecting data is you need to have a real-world robot. And first of all, everyone has vacuum, but no one has a real-world humanoid or robot arm in their house. And then you need to do some kind of teleoperation to teach the robot, to do the task and collect the data in this process. So in that context, in that setting, we realize that it's not feasible to scale data in a way that's meaningful, similar to what, internet scale of data could be. So we look at, is there a way we can remove the need of having a robot and keep everything, as ubiquitous as possible. So what's the most ubiquitous device you have? And that's your mobile phone. So the idea came to me, which is that maybe I can, develop a mobile app that sort of replace the need of a real robot, whereby we project an augmented reality robot that is in the physical space. And then, as humans, interact with the object in the real world, the robot is actually tracking the position of your hand and moving to the same position that you would expect the robot to move to. And with a bit of like post editing, you can remove the hand and then you will get like a full video trajectory rollout of what the robot is exactly doing the same task that you would have done if you have a physical robot trying to teach it. So by doing that, you remove the need of having a physical robot. Now you can able to collect robot data without actually needing a physical robot. And you can use those data to train a policy really effectively, I would say even comparable to, having a physical robot. So that solved the problem of, data collection. And by making this whole process ubiquitous, we hope to democratize this process. And because if you can, everyone can just download an app and start collecting data, and everyone can contribute to having robot data. Yeah.
I think I still have some trouble wrapping my head around that because from the sound of it, you just download an app on your phone and then let's say there's a worker on the assembly line. You just make a video or like shoot a few photos. And then after that, you have the data right at your fingertips.
So I think the idea also, one thing I learned from doing research projects is usually the best solution is the most simplest. Like there's no need to have a lot of fancy systems or, like complicated tricks. It's just a simple, straightforward idea and executing the idea and bringing that to the world. I think that often has the best effect. And if you think about it, a lot of these big ideas in not just robotics, but in AI research are just very simple ideas now if you think about it. Yeah. So it's not something fancy. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a very important thing to consider. These days, there are these just 10-step workflows to solve like a very small problem. And then people are just entangled within the complexities of going into a rabbit hole.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Other than that, I think if you could just point out, let's say, what is the core trick behind this entire pipeline? Like, about the data transfer that you spoke about earlier.
Yeah, so I think the core trick behind the data transfer is that you're able to get high fidelity robot data that matches the distribution of what real world robot data could look like. And as a result, models are able to sort of take in this data and be able to train on it and deploy. And I think also another part about doing research is that you want your work to sort of inspire other people, because just as how you guys just mentioned that you try to, a lot of the things I did previously, you guys are trying to build on top of it. Same as academic research, we're always building on top of we're always standing on the shoulders of the giants, people who come before us. So it's good to see actually a lot of the ideas that was first proposed in AR2D2 has been used in many research papers. For example, how do you in-paint away the robot with replacing human hands with simulated robot trajectories, and then sort of bridge the gap. So I think there is a lot of use case, and I think that's really exciting to see how that one idea could be sort of populated forward. Yeah.
I think just out of curiosity, I have one last question in my mind based on your description of the solution. Although you do approach it very elegantly, I think there's always a concern that when there's a human demo, then there's a sort of a level of inconsistency that might creep in. So how do you address it from a robustness standpoint?
So I think obviously there is going to be an inconsistency because humans are sort of collecting this data using augmented reality robot, and you are having human in the loop for this process. So the idea is that when your scale of data gets large enough, the inconsistency doesn't exist anymore. So it's the same rationale as training large language models. If you have a lot of text data, there's going to be text data that makes no sense, but you are still part of the training mixture. And because you are having such a large scale amount of data, those becomes not relevant anymore. Yeah.
Sounds very interesting indeed. Yeah. Perhaps let's move on and talk about your PhD days.
Oh, okay.
I think just first off, most of us want to know so to those of you who don't know, Jiafei was NTU and he straight away went into a PhD at the University of Washington in Seattle, which is in the United States of America. So just why did you go straight into a PhD? Because most of the audience here, I'm sure, are currently either in the job hunt or are going to be looking to join the rat race very soon.
I see. So I think okay, so that's an interesting question. So like to be realistic, I think in my batch when I graduated from NTU, the people that I know that did a PhD was 2%, and that includes me. And I know quite a lot of people in NTU. So it just shows that people are not, or at least in a Singapore context, people are more preferable towards doing software engineering, or to be I have a lot of friends that actually sell insurance, if that makes sense. And I have friends that became a real estate agent. So I think the rationale why I want to do a PhD is personal preference. I like to do research, but also it's a deeper preference, right? Which is that I could still be a real estate agent after I finish my PhD. But you can't be a real estate agent and do a PhD after that. So that's the rationale, which is that you're only going to be young for a period of time. You want to sort of try to pursue the things that or try to stretch yourself as far as you can, and then have no regrets on that, and then do other things. Yeah. And that's the rationale of what motivates me to actually pursue a PhD right after I graduate from undergrad. Yeah.
I do hope a lot of people take inspiration and don't end up being real estate agents. I think
it's a good job. It's a good job. Don't call me.
No, I'm not. I'm not pulling anyone down here. But I think you rightly mentioned that it was inside you. You had that motivation to pursue the PhD. And perhaps one question that's lingering in the back of everybody's mind is: are we built for a PhD? So, in your opinion, how do you see it? Like, who is built for a PhD and who isn't?
So I won't say like who is built for a PhD or who isn't built for a PhD. I think everyone can do a PhD, or like everyone, if you want to sort of pursue this endeavor, you can go ahead and do it. But it's more of like, I guess, like to do a PhD requires certain traits, and obviously you might not have these traits at the very beginning. It could be developed over time, but the traits doesn't really change too much, right? So I think the first trait will be someone that is determined in a way whereby you are not always going to get the answer in the first try. In fact, you might fail many times before you even get the right answer. You might be for like 2 years, you don't publish a single paper, and suddenly you publish a paper that sort of like, changes the whole field. So that could also happen. So I mean, like, but then to be in that position means that you have to have the perseverance, you have to be determined and to push through. And I think also another thing that really requires that you might want to have in order to do a PhD is that you have to be rigorous about the things that you are saying, the claims that you make, and the proof that you sort of like propose, because ultimately this is academic research, because people will expect whatever you say to have certain weight. Yeah. So I think if you are someone that is rigorous, and someone that's detail oriented, and if you're someone that has that perseverance, that will suggest that you could try to do a PhD, because it's not easy. Like, it's really not easy. You're getting very little in terms of salary, while all your friends are getting much higher, being a real estate agent, for example. So it's not that easy, but I think the outcome will be rewarding, because ultimately you get to see how your research plays a role in the bigger context, right? Not just impacting you, but impacting the rest of the world, and impacting the way people think about certain topics. Yeah.
I think there's one word that you mentioned which is lingering at the back of my mind, which is perseverance.
Yeah.
I think most people, when they hear the word research, rather, they think that, oh, we're going to become the next Edison, I'm going to invent the light bulb. But in reality, most of the researchers are making infinitesimal gains, if I can put it that way, to what we already know. And it is a very hard process, and it requires that tenacity.
Yeah.
So perhaps could you just speak to that, and to anyone who's looking to engage in research?
So I think that the idea of having this perseverance is that you are not trying to persevere through in the way where you are always trying to go heads in and try to sort of like grind a road through in research, but it's more of like persevering through day by day, pushing yourself forward, because also a huge part of doing research is luck.
Right.
Yeah, many people don't think this actually matters, but trust me, luck matters. Like, what I mean by luck means that you are at the right time, at the right place, doing the right thing with the right idea. If anything, if the idea comes 1 month before, 2 months later, it totally might not be relevant anymore. So being at the right time, right place, doing the right idea will actually matters a lot. But in order for you to reach that point, requires you to have the perseverance of, pushing yourself through every day, trying to understand things, trying to, improve on some of your skills, and develop better understanding of your topics, and explore deeper into the subject area that you are interested in, so that one day when the luck comes, you are there. Because if you give up, then even when the luck comes, you are not going to be there to catch it. Yeah.
I think it brings back a very famous quote by an Englishman who said that, who asked Thomas Edison, "Oh, you failed 3,000 times." He said that, "Oh, I figured out 3,000 ways to not invent a light bulb." And I think that just speaks towards the resolve that researchers need to have in today's day.
Yeah.
Perhaps, like, if I were to move on from that, to the students that are looking for a PhD here, I think one thing that's always in everybody's mind is how to get in, be it a job, be it a PhD application, MBA application, anything. So could you speak towards the PhD application itself? What matters?
Okay. Yeah. So I think PhD these days are I honestly, I think it's getting more and more competitive. I'm not sure about like other fields, but at least in computer science or in like AI research, there is a joke around which says that you need to have a PhD to get a PhD, which means that you need to have enough publication of a PhD student in order for you to even apply to be a PhD. So it's kind of sad, but it's also a bit of the reality state, whereby AI research has been moving so fast to a point whereby high schoolers could have like top tier conference paper. Yeah, and it makes the whole field really competitive. But being that said, I think ultimately it's not the number of papers, it's not the number of publications you have that sort of put you at the spot of doing a PhD, but it's more of the impact, or like the rigorous thought process you have on just maybe doing one project, and that is something that maybe your advisor could see from the project, and thinks that this is the right person to pursue a PhD. Yeah. So I think there's a lot of elements in terms of PhD application these days. Obviously it's getting more competitive, but I guess like don't be so fixated on the numbers. but just do what even if it takes a bit longer, for you to sort of develop better skills and make yourself more competitive. But I think ultimately just don't give up. Yeah.
I think you rightly mentioned that you need to have a PhD to get a PhD. I've heard here and there that you need to have 1 first author paper, 2 first author paper in order to get into the competitive programs. It's just, it feels like a mountain to climb from our standpoint at the moment, but I'm sure your advice is going to be very helpful. I think building upon what you said, perhaps you could also tell us how you know when an advisor or a laboratory is a good fit for you. Does it meet your cadence, mentorship style, or in terms of collaboration itself?
So I think when you reach the level of doing a PhD, you realize that there's only certain things you care about, right? I mean, first of all, I think the thing that I care a lot about when making decision of which school that I want to go to, of course, that's after you get all your offers in. Like one of the number one decision that I need to consider, not number one, like one of the most important factors that I would like to consider is, the place that it's in. Because, you don't want to be living like on a farmland for like the next 5 years of your life. You want to be in a place that's vibrant, that has, that goes beyond work. There's also life. Yeah. And you want to be in a place that there is cost of opportunity, whereby, you are surrounded by tech companies, this kind of large tech companies that's able to, provide a lot of resource to support your research. And I think the second thing that actually matters the most, even more than the first thing, is the right fit with your advisor. Because like, obviously you're not going to be able to, get that feel, just from like 1 or 2 interaction with a potential advisor. But I guess you can sort of, have a sense of it, and also have a sense of, the kind of work he does and the kind of students that came out from the group. And that will give you a good sense of, whether this is the right person for you to work with for the next 5 years. Obviously, it won't always work out. It takes, everything takes 2 hands to clap. So it takes both of you to, put in the effort to make sure that the relationship of the advisor and the student to be really good in a way that will lead to a successful PhD. So I can't speak a lot more, because like in a sense whereby everyone has a different journey. Yeah, and everyone's situation is pretty different. Yeah. But I think overall, I think the 2 things I think matters the most is the life and the work. And the work means that the person that you're working with.
Yeah, I think that's very well put. It does take 2 hands to clap, and there is always that sense of matching and working on the same wavelength that's there. Perhaps now that we've covered your PhD itself, you can tell us about moving to the US. It's of course a really big culture shock, both not just academically but also in terms of living over there. So how has that been?
I think US is pretty it's a big country. Like there's a lot of things you can explore. There's so much national park, and there's many things happening, right? So I think it's definitely a whole different experience being someone that lived in Singapore for like, I guess, the most entirety of my life. But after all, it's not like home, whereby in the sense whereby you are not able to, I guess, you're not able to, get, the home cooked food that your mom makes for you. You're not able to sort of like being close to your family. So I think there is obviously a trade-off, but I guess overall you are also being put in a place whereby you are sort of like in a very dense pool of talents. That means like you're working with people that you only sort of heard of them because of the work they did. And like I used to have a colleague, he's the 17th highest cited person in history.
Wow.
So it's not even in the world, it's like in the history of research. So I mean, these are the kind of people that you are able to sort of work with, interact with, pick their brains, to learn from them, and obviously learn their work ethics. I think these are things that is harder to see being in Singapore. Obviously Singapore has a lot of talented people, but it's just a different whole context. Yeah.
I think you mentioned that Singapore does have a lot of talent, and I do agree with that. But being based out of Singapore, all of us are yearning to know, perhaps, what is one thing that Singapore does wrong from what you've seen in the US, and one thing that we do right, so that we can all build towards achieving the ideal, as you would put.
I won't use the word wrong, but I feel that maybe one thing that could be sort of better or improve upon is that maybe they should remove away, like, I guess, like, do you guys still have final exam?
Yes.
And that's like 60%?
Yes.
Okay, so maybe they could just weigh down there and have more distributed homework. But I'm not sure where everyone agrees.
Continuous
Yeah,
learning.
more continuous assessment. Obviously, it's going to take more time, but it's going to be worth, because you're actually learning things, that actually, or even not having homework, but having like a major project that consists of different stages rather than just a one-time final exam. Because a one-time final exam can be optimized.
Right.
If you do enough past year paper, you can optimize for it. So you're not really learning. You're just optimizing. So I think if there's one thing I think could be done better based on my experience, is that, having hands-on project whereby students really dive deep and try to solve some of these problems of the real world could be more meaningful. Yeah. And I think I'm seeing that actually happening, at least from my interaction with some of the faculties here. It sounds like they are moving towards that. But these are things could be improved on.
What do you think is one thing we do right?
One thing we do right, I think one thing we do right is we need to provide students like you guys, with the opportunity to succeed, right? What I mean by that means that, I don't see a MLDA equivalent in the States.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because this requires funding. Like,
right.
The school might not have funding to build such facilities for you guys. So being able to, or at least in the school context, able to support student that wants to do, things like MLDA, and having that full support both financially and, in every aspect, is definitely a huge gain for Singapore. And because with that, you're able to, have talented, alumni that came out from MLDA, and also like develop people's interest for machine learning and data analytics. So I think that's something that is done right, because, and this is not just because of like the school, right? It's because also the location that Singapore is in, which is in an international hub for research and technology, so that people are recognizing it, and a lot of resources are coming into it. That's why we're able to do all these things. Yeah.
I think most of us are aware that you've actually had experience across multiple of the reputed organizations that students look forward to joining to these days, be it NVIDIA, Allen Institute, or even A-Star for that matter. Could you speak to what matters while trying to get into these institutes, getting research internships, or even contributing in a sense? Because as you rightly mentioned, solving the big problems is what students should be driven by.
Yeah, so I think I'm not sure about like Singapore, but at least in the States, I think degree is just a minimum entry point. Like, many people has a degree. In fact, people don't have a degree could still be hired as a research scientist, research engineer in Google these days, or like in some of these tech companies. So I think the idea here is not really, like, I personally think that degrees, it matters, because at least you go through the minimum requirement for systematic education. But I think what actually really matters is learning how to learn. Yeah, I think that's also something that they might try, they at least in school, they try to teach you through these courses, but I think it's not that well enforced or strengthened. So it's only when you do these projects on your own, you really learn how to learn. And if you're able to learn how to learn, then any interview that's out there in some of this tech company, you are able to easily overcome, and then they will be more than welcome to hire you as their talent. Yeah.
Right.
And once you are in this kind of company, then you realize that that now you are able to push for a lot of these ideas that you have previously, but you can't do it because of constrained resource. Yeah, like simply put it, like in terms of compute, like for at least for people who works on AI, or ML research. Yeah, I'm not sure how much compute they have to train some of their models, but at least in NVIDIA, it can go all the way up to from like a few hundred, H100 to 1,000 nodes. Yeah.
And those resources are available when
for
you join the organization?
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Sounds very interesting. Just out of pure curiosity, I'm dying to know, because you contribute so much, you do so much. What does a day in your life look like in the States?
It's kind of boring. I mean, I think it's just it's a regular day in the life. So I think it starts with like just some morning either go to the gym or work out, or and after that we'll just be focused on doing research. I think it's pretty typical. Yeah, like these days I'm trying to have more work-life balance. But other than that, I think it's pretty typical. It's fine. Yeah, I think beyond that, I think what other things that is different is that I guess because when you're at least sometimes, okay, I'll try to say sometimes I tend to work overtime, but but that's not true. But actually, most of the time I work really late. But that's the thing, right? Because we are passionate about the things that we are working on, so you don't really feel that you are working late. You don't feel that you are working what Singapore call OT, like overtime. And obviously, I'm not being paid as a PhD student to work OT. So it's purely from the passion of like doing research and trying to solve the big problems that you are currently in. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it is the passion that drives you. But I think one last question about your PhD itself. How do you choose what problems to solve? Because, I mean, as you rightly mentioned, it does become a rabbit hole at times.
Yeah, so I think these days there's a lot of publications or research out there, right? Like, I'm not sure, like, how many of you read a paper in the last 1 week? A show of hands. Any paper. It can be newspaper also. Okay, never mind. People don't read newspaper these days. But anyway, if you read a paper, at least in the last 1 week, you realize that a lot of papers are incremental. So you don't want to solve research problem that is going to be the problem of today. You want to solve research problem that is going to be a research problem of tomorrow or 5 years from now. That means 5 years from now, someone is still going to care about this problem. And I think that's the problem that's worth solving. If you're trying to solve a problem that only people care about it today, then there's no point to do that research because that solution is already out there or someone has already have that solution.
Mm-hmm.
So I think one thing that my advisor always tells us is that if you want to write a paper, you should try to write only 2 types of paper. Either the paper that started a field or a paper that ends the field. Yeah. So what I mean by started a field means that you propose an idea whereby no one ever think about it and you sort of inspire many people to sort of work towards this direction. Or you write a paper whereby there is this field that's already there and everyone trying to improve on the field, but your paper sort of ends the field in a way that there's no way you can improve anymore because that's the best. Yeah. I think my advisor got this advice from his advisor, which is Feifei Li.
Yeah. I see. Well, now we have a fun mid-episode quick-fire round. So, what is your favorite Singaporean food in Seattle?
Favorite Singaporean food in Seattle. So it's in Seattle, but favorite Singaporean food.
Yep.
Chicken rice. There's not much options, but yeah.
What is your favorite chicken rice in Singapore?
Favorite chicken rice in Singapore is at Bishan. This place called Golden Hill. That's near the community center. I'm not sure whether people know, but it's a hawker center.
Okay. I look forward to trying that.
Yeah.
What was your favorite late night NTU hangout spot, except MLDA perhaps?
I think only MLDA. Or
Only
if not
MLDA.
Garage.
Oh,
Garage,
it's not Garage.
yeah.
I see. Were you
Or the outreach office.
Okay.
I'm not sure if the outreach office still there. There's
not
a
sure.
office for the outreach team. Yeah.
Were you a member of Garage as well?
I also remember Garage and also AAA outreach.
That sounds interesting. So we know that you're a basketball fan. LeBron or Michael Jordan?
Michael Jordan.
See, I told you guys. What is your favorite LLM?
My favorite LM. I think Quen these days is my favorite.
Oh, Quen.
Yeah.
That is not a popular answer.
Yeah, I know. Because Quen is one of the LM I think that does pretty well in terms of getting high quality data,
Mm-hmm.
and of course like open sourcing their checkpoint. Yeah. Yeah. It won't be like GPT on these things. Yeah.
Are you more into dogs or cats?
Dogs.
I think most of the NTU community would take offense at that because we have a lot of cat fans here.
Oh, okay. Cool.
And there is this Telegram chat called Meows of NTU. Not sure if it was there when you were here.
No, I didn't. Back then there wasn't such. Back then there was a chat that sells fried rice. Fried noodle, bihun at night.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure if there's still such a Telegram chat.
Well, we have NTU free food now, so anywhere across campus.
No, back then they will have a car that drives around NTU to have a night supper delivery.
That sounds very nice. Who were your favorite 3 NTU professors?
Prof. Gui, Prof. Wen, and Dr. Wesley.
I'm sure many of us have had the opportunity to work with them even now, and
Okay.
contributing a lot.
Yeah.
So good. That's nice. If not AI and robotics, what would you be doing? Perhaps not real estate agent either.
I would be a politician.
Oh,
Yeah.
so you're ex NVIDIA, right?
Yeah.
Do your friends ping you for GPU discounts?
They don't pay me for GPU discount, but they ask me whether I get stocks. Yeah.
Isn't that insider trading?
No.
You don't need to admit it to the camera.
you get stocks because you're an employee of NVIDIA.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they give you stocks at they don't give you for free, but they give you at discounted rate.
I see.
And depends on when you join. NVIDIA stock was $60 something. Now it's 170.
What is a tiny tool that you can't live without?
A tiny tool.
Like perhaps a day-to-day aid.
Oh, like my computer tool or
Yeah, could be a computer tool.
screenshot.
Ah.
What
What is the most go-to screenshot for you? Like in your work, or
what I mean?
like
Just
what do you use it for?
The snap tool.
Yeah.
What I use it for? If I watch a video, I see something that's interesting, I'll just screenshot it and then I'll save it for later. Yeah. And Notion. I think these are the 2 tools.
I'm glad you bring that up because our operations team is working very hard to adopt Notion to MLDA as well.
Oh, okay, cool.
I think I have one last question for this round. Perhaps my favorite question as well, and one that everybody is split over.
Okay.
Do you think that pineapple belongs on pizza?
You mean like Hawaiian kind of stuff?
Yeah, I guess.
I hate Hawaii.
So no pineapple on pizza. There we have it. No pineapple on pizza from one of the leading researchers that MLD has produced.
I mean, I hate pizza in general, but
Oh. I think we can move on from the fun segment now and circle back to some of the work that you've contributed to.
Oh, so that was the fun segment.
Yes. I hope you had fun.
Okay.
So let's talk about RoboPoint.
Okay.
You can maybe explain to our audience here what exactly that's about.
Yeah, so I think RoboPoint is actually a very interesting idea that we have previously. So I'm not sure whether anyone here, if you do computer vision, one of the most common way of using computer vision is to do bounding box detection. Correct? You train on a large amount of bounding box data set. You can use YOLO or whatever. You can. Oh yeah, fun fact: the author of YOLO is from University of Washington.
Wow.
And he worked with me also. We are colleagues. Yeah. Really interesting guy. You guys should check him out. Yeah. And so when you use things like YOLO, you are doing bounding box detection. But a lot of times, this bounding box detection are sort of conditional objects, right? So you draw a bounding box on a chair, you draw a bounding box on a person. ChatGPT can also output bounding box coordinates. Gemini can also do that. But what if you want to be able to do grounding, whereby you try to ground language into vision, that means into a 2D image, on objects that is not grounded, there's no concept objects. So for example, let's say, draw a bounding box between the 2 chairs in front of me. There's no reference of any object, right? There's a free space there. So the idea of RoboPoint is that we actually train our own multimodal language model, which is a GPT equivalent, that is able to not only, answer questions, like if you ask him, who's the president of USA, he'll say Donald Trump, but the model is also able to output 2D coordinates on the image. And that's basically pointing. I guess pointing is really intuitive. Everyone points. If you want to express something, language can be ambiguous. You might not be able to express, what you want to, but you can just point to it and people understand. So we train this VLM model that's able to generate these 2D coordinates to point. And because you can point, you can actually connect these to any kind of robotic system. And the robot can basically take in an instruction, which is natural language, and it generates the point coordinates on 2D, and the robot will just move there. So you're actually able to ground language into the image and then ground it further into the action. So I think that's the first of its kind, because previously there's no such thing as a pointing model. Yeah. And the fun fact about this is that as I say, doing research means that you want to inspire people to do it. all the models that's out there, frontier models like Gemini, GPT, Grok, like Quen, all these model only has pointing capability after our paper came out. And we open source the data. So I'm not going to say much, but definitely they train on something.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's good to see that, how your research at small scale could inspire industry that, trains these kind of frontier models to incorporate some of this capability.
Indeed, sounds very inspiring to me.
Yeah. And, you can play with it for any purpose. You can use your phone. You can say point to, the clock or point to something, it will all work. Yeah.
I think one thing that I have lingering in the back of my mind is, let's say that it is about identifying points, right? What sort of occlusions would there be, or lighting distractors, things like that? And how would you mitigate
that? So you won't have all these problems because this is large scale multimodal training. So you are not only training with pointing data, you're also training with general VQA data, you're training with internet scale data. So as a result, RoboPoint is able to generalize not only to the training data, but to anything else. And also, I want to point out one thing why pointing is important. If you go and prompt ChatGPT, you show ChatGPT a person's hand, and that hand has 6 fingers, and you ask him how many fingers are there. ChatGPT will tell you 5, even though there's 6.
Right.
But if you put this image into our model, the model will output 6 points. And if you output 6 points, that means there's 6 fingers. So that's one thing that is really neat, because a lot of times ChatGPT are heavily overfitted to actually not even looking at the image, because language itself is trivial, right? How many fingers do you have? Most people have 5 fingers. Yeah. So I think this is an example where I'm trying to show that pointing is really important. It goes beyond just drawing a point, but you're actually using that to do reasoning.
I think also it speaks to the point that you mentioned earlier about the diversity in training itself.
Yeah, of course.
I think there was this experiment that I recall now about how one scientist prompted ChatGPT continuously to generate a clock that shows 9:30 p.m. But every single time it's going to generate a wristwatch that shows you 10:10 exactly, because that's what most wristwatch manufacturers love to show.
Yeah.
So it just circles back to the entire training process involved in these models. I think moving on, talking about the VLMs that you've worked on, there was one particular paper that caught my eye, AHA, or is it pronounced AHA?
Yes, AHA.
So talking about that AHA moment. So I think it's about detecting failure reasoning.
Yes.
So could you tell our audience about it?
Yeah, sure. So I think one of the number one problem in robotics these days is that if you have a robot that's doing a task for you at home, and if the robot fails, you only know when it fails when a human comes in, sees what the robot is trying to do, and realize that, the task I told the robot is to pour me a cup of coffee, and the robot splashed the coffee everywhere. And that's where you know it fails. And because if you know it fails, if humans give the robot feedback, the robot might, improve its system. If you have this kind of foundation model for robotics, you could iterate and try to improve. But the problem is that you have to have a human always come in and give that feedback. Correct? So that is kind of not scalable. You want to have an automated system whereby a VLM is able to look at what the robot is doing consistently and tries to give that feedback signal. Not just in terms of, have you succeeded in doing this task, but, if you fail, why exactly you fail? And I think this is something very important. Humans don't learn by just telling someone that you fail at doing this. But if humans learn when someone explains to him why he failed. Because you are learning through failure. You're not learning through someone telling you that you fail. Correct? So with that idea in mind, we want to try to train a VLM ourselves that's able to, give any robot video, and the VLM will be able to tell the user whether the robot has succeeded in doing the task that it was desired to do. And if it didn't, what exact reason caused it to fail. And because if you have the exact reason, you're able to feed that reasoning back as a feedback loop into any kind of robotic system that leverages VLMs, and then that could iteratively improve. So why would this work really well? Because if you think about it, when you have ChatGPT to draw you or sort of write a code to draw you a figure plot, ChatGPT might not get it right the first time. And then it comes out with a code that, looks legit. You run that code into Google Colabs or, VS Code, whatever. You see the visualization of the plot, and you're like, oh, this is not what I want. but you know exactly what actually is wrong about that plot. So you give that information back in language to ChatGPT. ChatGPT will re-edit that code, right?
Right.
And it will actually get it right the second time. So in the same rationale here is that now if you have a VLM that can detect robot failure and automatically pass that back into the system, now the system can be able to improve itself to generate better outcomes because it's the same kind of human-in-the-loop training. Yeah.
I think this concept of human-in-the-loop training and
Yeah.
explainability in robotics, this is something that's being emphasized on a lot these days. So
Yeah, of course, yeah.
So just for our audience, why is that important?
Because we are sort of moving into an era whereby you're no longer putting a robot in the cage, right? You're going to have one day having humanoids or having robots that's going to coexist with you.
Mm-hmm.
So in that situation comes, you don't want to have a robot that's doing random stuff and you have no idea what it's doing. Correct. Like what can a vacuum do? A robot vacuum, the most it can do is, I don't know, it ram into your sofa and then it stop moving. But if you have a humanoid robot in your house, what's the worst thing it can do? It can do a lot of worse things. Correct, if it goes crazy.
Yeah.
So the rationale is that it's important to understand what actually goes down the hood in some of these policies. It's important to be able to detect any time when this kind of failure occurs. It's able to be able to explain what is intent through this kind of process. Yeah.
That does sound important moving forward. I think about the humanoid robots just bouncing around. Are you a big Isaac Asimov fan? I'm sure you might have seen.
Yeah, no.
No?
Yeah.
I do recommend you check it out. He explodes some of your worst fears.
Okay.
Moving on to the next work that we'd like to discuss here today is Colosseum.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah. So what does Colosseum reveal about design choices that generalize the data diversity architectures?
Yeah, so I think Colosseum is like more of a scientific paper whereby we really try to sort of study how robust is some of these robot policies, that is trained with like a huge amount of data. In the sense whereby if you train it in this environment right now, okay, and just give a fun fact. Back then when people first started doing robot learning, the early pioneers or people who are first in these areas are like people like Sergey or Chelsea. I'm not sure anyone knows about Physical Intelligence, the company that makes like, vision language action models. When they first started doing this, when Sergey was the advisor and Chelsea, who's currently a professor at Stanford, she was the PhD student. They only do experiment at 3 p.m. It's exactly at 3 p.m. It's because when they collected the data, the lighting of the environment was exactly that condition. So in order for that policy to work, they have to wait till next day, 3 p.m., come to that same room and run that policy. And that's how brittle it is for some of these robotic policies back then. Obviously, right now, things get better, but we don't really know how good it is.
Right.
So what Colosseum tried to propose is that in a simulation framework where you have a lot of tasks that a robot could potentially test on, during test time, we are systematically changing lighting, texture, object size, object environment, and see whether how robust is some of this model towards this kind of diverse change, and measure that in a more scientific way. Because if you do this in the real world, I'm not sure you can control the lighting to be exactly the same. Can you ensure that the table is always the same texture? Or can you ensure that the object is exactly symmetrical but scaled down? So these are things that you can't ensure. So that's why we propose Colosseum as a simulation benchmark to evaluate how robust is some of these models' capability to generalize to all these kind of different environmental change. And this matters because at the end of the day, you want to be able to have a robot brain that not only works in the room that collects the data, but works in every room. Yeah, if that makes sense.
Yeah, of course. I think there has been a lot of chitter chatter about how simulation versus real world for robotics, especially, is just there's such a big gap, and scientists are working so hard towards addressing that. Where do you see this going in terms of how we're developing it? Of course, Colosseum is one of the solutions that there are, because I mean, to those of you who don't know, let's say if you're running a simulation on your software and you're running one in real life, your real life sensor data is never going to match what you're doing in the simulation. And some of your work also has been to that end. So if we can talk about that and to our audience's interest.
Yeah, so I think there is definitely going to be a sim to real gap that going to exist in robotics. But I feel that also like another way to think about this is that people are working towards bridging that gap, or at least the company that tries to sell GPU is trying to work towards that objective. So NVIDIA has to show that, right? So NVIDIA has to show that, training and simulation will ultimately lead to performance gain in the real world, because training and simulation is powered by NVIDIA GPU.
Right.
Yeah. So I think that's the natural cost, which is good because it means that more effort will be going in to make better simulation, making it more realistic, making the physics and the interaction much more physically realistic, and that will help to push the field forward significantly. Yeah.
I think moving on, I'd like to talk about the latest up-and-coming class of models, action reasoning models.
Okay.
So for our audience, so action reasoning models are a new kind of models which provide transparent and steerable robot actions. And Jiafei actually worked on one very recently, MLDA. And there is this 3D pipeline about understanding the environment, planning, execution. So I think we'd all like to hear about.
Oh yeah. So MoMA is the first. Excuse me. MoMA is the first flagship model from Allen Institute of AI, and we call this action reasoning model. It's a class of robotics foundation model that was trained in-house in AI2, and I led the effort in training that. I think the idea here is that one of the first important thing that AI2 tries to focus on, or for people who don't really know what the Allen Institute for AI is all about, is that every model that you see out there that is like VLM, LM, I would say most of them are not fully open source.
Right.
Yeah. So, for example, if you use like Qwen 2.5 VL, or you use like, I don't know, like obviously there is like open source model like Lava 1 Vision and all these things, but there is going to be some components of it that's not open source. Correct. Either the data is not open source, either the training code is not open source, either the evaluation is not open source, or either the even all the way down to the image encoder, they might not be open source. So there is a lot of this model out there, and I won't say they're not good models. They are really good models. The most closed source model that's out there is called ChatGPT, although they have like open source checkpoint these days. But these closed source models are good because they are able to have a bunch of data that they're able to find everywhere and train their model. But that is also bad for the idea of doing open science, right? Which is that if anyone wants to access to this model, they want to be able to diagnose the model. They're not able to understand actually what goes underneath the hood in this model. They're not able to do it. So MoMA, which has been a first flagship model of AI2 for vision for action reasoning model, we make sure that everything is open source end to end. So everyone is able to inspect what goes down to the training, all the way to the every single line of code that we write for training, to evaluation, to everything. Basically, everything is open source. You can reproduce exactly what we did. So that's the first selling point. The second selling point being an action reasoning model is because we are not just predicting action directly from observation. We're actually doing this thing that you have seen a lot in like language model. It's called a chain of thought prompting. Correct. So when you do chain of thought prompting, you're not increasing the data. You're actually using the same data that was trained on that model, but you are asking to think step by step and extracting more information out of it. So following that paradigm, robotics data is actually harder to get as compared to a language or vision data. So because it's harder to get, we want to get the most out of the same amount of data. So we need to have some form of representation of chain of thoughts. Correct. But it's hard to say chain of thoughts if you just use language, because language is ambiguous, right? So you need to be able to reason in space. And the way we reason in space is that MoMA will first predict a perception token, which sort of represents what a 3D scene that is sensing from what is observation. And then condition on that, it will generate an intermediate plan in terms of a visual trace that can be sketched onto a 2D image, telling you that the robot wants to move in a certain manner. And then condition on all this, it will predict the next action that the robot should actually take in the physical world, and doing this in a closed loop manner. So I think that's the whole idea of MoMA and how we try to achieve an action reasoning model. And by doing this, we show that you can get much better performance with very little data, and even outperform some of the frontier models like from Google, from like NVIDIA, from a lot of these companies. And that shows the science of the power of being an open source model. Yeah.
So picking up where we left off, we were talking about MLDA and VLMs and robotic foundation models in particular. So I'd like you to perhaps illustrate what exactly is the differences in the two. And I mean, many people are trying to put together the extra pieces that are required, but many a times you end up with a problem at your hands. So
yeah, so I think like sort of to understand this whole paradigm, I guess like we all know like language model like LLMs, right? So when you have an LLM that goes into like VLM, you're basically doing like vision language alignment, and that's what basically the whole stage training is trying to do. You're training with like VQA or vision reasoning data, and then you hope that the model is able to do this kind of vision language alignment, and then you are able to prompt that model to output, given an image, output some kind of text. So the next class, which is like vision language action model, is that now you're trying to do a vision language action alignment, whereby now given an image of like observation and also like language instruction, you can ask the robot to actually generate actionable outputs, and this can actually control the robot to perform the necessary tasks required. So I think this is the higher level. Obviously, the whole idea of a robotics foundation model, I think what is really underneath the hood is that you want to have a single model or single policy that's able to do many things and sort of serve like the robot brain that can be also fine-tuned in terms of specialized tasks. So I think this is also very interesting, and this follows the paradigm of all these like LLMs, right? So you can think of LLMs as a generalist model, but in machine learning or in AI, there's always been approach of pushing specialized models or specialized agents, right? So you have models that tries to solve machine translation. You have models that tries to solve like speech to text. You have models that tries to solve text to speech and whatever. These are all specialized models. But after a while, people realize that when you have this kind of really powerful generalist model, you can also use this generalist model to train better specialized model. And somehow that specialized model is much better than just going through the narrow specialized model training. So in that context, we want to do the same for robot. We want to have a really strong robot brain that can be, adapt or fine-tuned for many downstream tasks across different robot embodiment. Yeah.
I think just to round out this segment, when you're pushing the boundaries of what's possible in robotics, where do the truly significant gains come from? Is it about collecting the vast amounts of data? I mean, as we all know, reinforcement learning in particular has been very greedy towards what you can collect. Or is it about the raw power of the processors that we're creating? So like, as you mentioned rightly as well earlier about NVIDIA and how they're propelling their mission. So are we getting closer to our goals in a simulated environment, or is the messy reality of the physical world what's the reason?
I think maybe to sort of summarize the question, I think maybe the question you're asking me is like, as I'm trying to pursue this, what is like the goals or the objective I'm trying to look for, right? So I think the objective or the goal that I'm trying to look for is that we are trying to look for the early days of the GPT moment in robotics. So what do I mean by that? When ChatGPT first came out with GPT-3, I play around with it, I ask it some simple question, it outputs a bunch of language output tokens, but sometimes it makes mistake, but sometimes it gives a really good output. But as a human, you will not think that the mistake it makes it dumb. You can sense that it's actually doing something like it's just impressive, correct? Even though it makes mistake. So in robotics, we have not really reached that point, or at least we have not even figured out a way to know whether have we reached that early GPT moment that we see in ChatGPT. So I think that is why it's really the objective, and that's what really excites me to see that maybe when we have that GPT moment or robotics come, whatever the work that we do sort of helps to push that. Yeah.
I think moving on, we have just one final segment,
Okay, sure.
which is going to be more general. I think thank you first of all for talking about all your work so far. But I'd like to zoom out a bit and talk about robotics in general. So one thing that we've talked about, of course, is safety and human-in-the-loop guardrails that we're, of course, working towards, but not quite there yet. So can you give us like a realistic viewpoint on where we're at on this right now, and perhaps how the contributions are going to look like?
You mean like a realistic state of robotics right now?
In this particular domain.
Okay, so I think a show of offense, how many of you seen cool demo videos of robots doing like kung fu or backflips? Okay. How many of you see cool videos of robots that's able to do very precise assembly of a PC? Okay. How many of you ever seen a robot deploy in your household? or anyone's household? So the answer is no. So what I'm trying to make is that you see all these cool demos, and you see this like huge hype, but actually in the reality of deployment, no one has a robot in their house doing their household tasks. Correct. No one says that they have a robot. That would mean doing a house task means it doesn't mean that someone is remote controlling it from 1,000 miles away, but actually running a policy in real time, taking instruction from the user and doing that task. So to answer your question, we are still very far. Yeah. So even you see such great hypes, you see so much, things happening in robotics, but these are not the things that actually will bring a robot to your house. A robot that can do bad fix is not going to be able to try to clean out your house and take out your laundry and put it and fold your clothes. So we are moving towards that. Obviously, you have seen videos of robots that's able to fold laundries, but these are all videos. Yeah, it could be, I don't know. I'm not saying that these are cherry pick, but it could be recording a very different context, right? So only till the day where I can see a robot that's been deployed in a household, and I see for real, and I see that these are running on a model that's autonomous, then I will know for sure that we have reached there. But until then, I think we are still, I would say, much better state than previously, because there's the huge amount of compute, there's a huge amount of hardware that's going around before these humanoid robots. There's a lot more investments and there's more attention to robotics. So I think we are definitely at a much better spot to reach that point. Yeah.
Brings me back to something I read in a book a few years back. So just for context, APJ Abdul Kalam was once invited to Germany, and he got to see that there's this field with humanoid robots playing football. But then he asked the researcher, "Oh, can I put this in my home? Can I play with it myself?" And the answer is no, which is quite astounding when you think about it.
Yeah.
And again, reiterates your point about us not being there yet.
Yeah. And you read a lot of books.
I try. So I think moving on from a student's point of view, because many of us want to enter industry or many of us want to enter academia, but there's always this hypothesis or rather expectation of what sort of roles don't exist yet. And in particular, as you mentioned, robotics hasn't had its GPT moment. So we do not know what the future of this industry is going to look like. So what do you expect moving forward, and where can students perhaps involve themselves?
I think obviously you want to sort of involve yourself in the cutting edge of advancing some of this technology, whether being in a situation whereby you're helping to develop some of this capability, but you never really want to be in a state where you are the sort of like the lower tier in the pyramid, right? So what do I mean by that? People work in developing robotic systems that allows us to collect a huge amount of data. People work in developing robot hardware that could be used to collect a large amount of data. But there's also a huge group of people that actually collect this data for you. So I mean, you don't see that in Singapore, but in China, there's like a factory of hundreds of robots, and their full-time job is to come there, control the robot, and do basically whatever task they are supposed to do. And that's not just in China. You see that in Tesla with Optimus. They have a whole warehouse over 200 humanoids where people are actually consistently generating data. So I think you don't want to be at that part of the chain. You want to sort of be the one that is sort of advancing some of these frontiers in terms of developing systems or even algorithms or models that could be used for other people to sort of build on top. Yeah.
That does sound interesting, and I hope many people will take inspiration from that. Moving on, last but not least, I'd like to ask you, what is the future for you? What do you hope to do? Perhaps moving out of Washington or staying in Washington?
Yeah. So I think the future for me is definitely to continue pursue research in a more in an environment that sort of helps to shape the frontier of the topic that I'm working on, and also in the same time even coming back to Singapore and sort of contributing back to the ecosystem. I really hope that this could be something that Singapore will see as the next frontier for at least in a national effort to pursue, which is MLDA and robotics. And I think Singapore is in a right position and is in a good spot right now to sort of start on or sort of embark on this vision. Yeah. And I think hopefully with me I'm able to play a small role in terms of contributing towards it.
Yeah, I think you rightly mentioned Singapore is developing industry in the right direction right now. We have many startups, Kabam, Eureka, all taking the lead on it. But do you consider yourself more of an industry person or an academia person moving forward?
I think I'm still more of a person that's interested in doing academic research.
Mhm.
I didn't. Maybe let me explain this a bit further. So industry is able to take an idea and scale that 100 times, correct? But if you look at the way people train language models, obviously there's new tricks that comes out, but the fundamental principle of training some of these models has always been the same, correct? And this comes from years of academic research, correct, that pushes this. So I want to be in that position where I'm doing academic research that the industry could actually take it and scale it, and that sort of shapes the world. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
And with that, I am at the end of the questions that I have for you right now. But before we disperse, thank you very much for taking the time to come down here to NTU. And I hope you had as good a time as the rest of us.